Their vision for women's health envisions a future where care is equitable and accessible so that all women in Canada can lead healthier lives. I'd like to thank the Process Art Discovery audience for joining me today. I'm Lynda Norman. I'm a watercolor artist in British Columbia. And today, in this very special episode, I'm going to be painting a piece of art that will be donated to a silent auction in support of Canadian mental health. The event is put on by Shoppers Foundation through Shoppers Drug Marts, which are found across Canada. Quarterly events bringing money to our communities for various causes. This particular event is for Canadian mental health, the local chapter. All monies go directly to the local chapter here in Kelowna. The link will be provided. If you're not in the Okanagan, but in Canada and would love to follow up and see where you can contribute in your community, we'll provide a link as well. This is exciting for me. I'm so pleased to support the Canadian Mental Health organization in our community and beyond, and be able to do that with my art. How perfect is that, right? Something I love to do to a cause that I love to support. So a little bit of background, and I brought this up because I didn't want to get the wording wrong. Shoppers Foundation is an organization that believes that all women deserve equitable and accessible care. Their vision for women's health envisions a future where care is equitable and accessible so that all women in Canada can lead healthier lives. Their commitments: Shoppers Foundation for Women's Health is investing $50 million by 2026 to make care more equitable and accessible for all women in Canada. So access, awareness, and research is where they focus. And it's supporting all women. It says, as part of their commitment, they recognize that the term women's health is understood in a variety of ways. Their work goes beyond the sex and gender binary, welcoming the experience of all women and gender diverse people. So it's exciting, it's all inclusive. That's kind of what I'm all about in my pursuit of art. Why I love having accomplices. I mean, no matter what it is we're doing, we're all in this together. And it's important that we have these opportunities, I think, to support our community. The monies that are raised through these events, and they do quarterly events, which is important, in all areas across Canada, the monies go directly to the community where they're raised. So that's very important to have that transparency. And another bit of information is that my daughter is a manager of one of the Shoppers Drug Marts here in Kelowna. And we'll put a link to that one where if you are local and you would like to donate, the monies will go straight to our charity here. And so I conversed with her about the piece that I would donate to their silent auction coming up on April 30th, coming soon. And she thought maybe something bright and spring-like. They have beauty mingles and different things that help women. And this spring, the colors are all bright and lovely and vibrant. So I did a little test piece this morning with a bit of yellows and blues and reds and purples and things, and a lighter sky than what I normally do. Often, if you've been following me, you know I love those moody skies and those misty vignettes and scenes. So this is going to be a little brighter, a little different. So I did this as a sample. They thought that they would like that, but they also liked this one with the water running through. So we'll see what we can do to combine the two. I'm going to be working on 100% cotton paper. This is Arche. I've taped it onto a little board here so that it's easier to work with. And I've got a few other colors from other than my regular palette. This palette is filled with Opus brand, which is a local company here in Canada, in British Columbia. And I brought this out because it does have the brighter yellow. This is a cadmium yellow. And if you don't have a cadmium yellow, you could use perhaps a Hansa yellow. There are some other beautiful, vibrant yellows out there available. New Gamboge is also a nice, bright, little more on the orangey side, but very bright and vibrant. For spring-like blossoms, an Azo yellow is another nice, bright color. Compared to, normally I use the quinacridone golds, and they're a bit more subtle and more earthy toned. So we're going to get started as quickly as we can here and see how far we can get this project in our time here. I'm just going to wet a few of these. And I think what I'm going to do also with this other palette is use a cobalt blue. I don't have a cobalt blue in my standard Daniel Smith palette, but I have cleared out one spot. So that may be something that I decide to add. I've been sitting with this empty one for a few days now, trying to decide what color I want to put in there. So maybe a cobalt blue might be just the idea, just the right idea to put some brightness into the paintings. So I'm waking up my paints with my mister spray bottle. This is a plant mister or a facial mister. You can get these off Amazon, or I think Michael's has them in your local art stores, perhaps even a dollar store. So really handy for keeping things juicy and wet and ready to go. I'm going to start with the sky and work down on this particular one. So I'm going to use a fairly large brush. This is a solo brush from Michael Solovia's Watercolor online. Again, we'll put links in the description. I love it that it's holding so much water. I can wet my page and not have to work at it. I see artists struggling sometimes with smaller brushes that don't hold as much water and working back and forth and back and forth. My paper is such an important part of my team to put all this together. I really don't want to overwork it. It's going to get enough things going on with putting on pigment and different things. So I'm just going to gently saturate. And with this one, I'm not too worried. I've got some spots that maybe don't have water. That's okay, because the dry brushing technique just adds to the texture. So I think with the same brush, I am going to go in with, I'm going to try some of that cobalt, I think, because it's a nice summer sky kind of color. And I'm just going to get that in a little darker, maybe on some of the sides. The page is starting to buckle just a little bit because it's absorbing all of that water that I put on, and that's fine. It'll mean that some of the pigment will sort of flow sort of its own accord. Now I'm going to put flowers and things around this bottom area, but I'm going to bring the sky down almost to the bottom, just because well, actually I think for this one I'm going to bring it to the bottom because I just remembered she thought maybe some water in there would be a nice effect. So I'm going to put just there. Now, quinacridone gold is my go-to sunset, sunrise bit for my painting. So I'm just going to take a little bit on my brush, and it's still quite damp, and I'm just going to gently lay some of that in, just to give a hint of some lightness happening in this sky. Like I say, some of this is going to be covered with shrubbery and trees and who knows what, but just to get that background, that glow happening. And because I'm applying this quinacridone gold over top of the blue and into some of the areas where there wasn't quite as much blue, at this stage where the paint is, or the paper rather, is still glistening, it's not sopping wet, there's not pooling, there's nothing happening there. The paper, because it's 100% cotton, has already started to absorb some of that water. And because it's at that level of wetness, when I apply the second color, it just kind of diffuses. And quinacridone gold is is beautiful for that anyway. It does have a way of just kind of finding its way into the design. Okay. Bring a little bit more of that sunlight coming into the sides. And now we're going to have some, I think, if we look at these, if we brought these up a little bit higher and left room for some water here, that probably would work quite well. I don't often paint from reference, but we'll use these as our references. And here we've got most of the shrubbery happening on that side, and actually I kind of like that. It's at a different. This is portrait, this is landscape orientation, so we would have to rethink that a tiny bit, but I think if we brought our shrubbery about at this level, and I'm just going to work that in a tiny bit, and then this side a little bit lower, and then we'll have some water meandering through that way. I think that's what we'll do. That makes sense to me. So with my water, I'm going to dab into my Mayan dark blue, and I'm going to take some of that off because that was pretty juicy and wet. And I'm just going to indicate slightly where I think I might want that water to flow through. We'll give it a bit of a zigzag, and then we'll work that in to our side bits and our shrubs and things after. Now, because we've got such a nice light sky, I'm going to go back into my cobalt blue, and I'm just going to bring a bit more of that through just to bring some of the highlights. All this time I'm keeping an eye on my sky. I've left a few of the lighter spots. That'll be great, but I'm going to go in with my paper towel and give it a little scrunch. And I'm just going to gently encourage a few more of the fluffier shapes for clouds. It's going to be light and sunny and beautiful. All of this, where I'm dabbing, will continue to diffuse while it's still a bit damp, and that will soften out all of those little edges. If you bring your paper towel sort of to a rounded bit, you can get more of the fluffy clouds. And I think before this gets any drier, I am going to build in my shrubbery and my garden areas. Now this is fairly dark. It will dry lighter. This is undersea green. And I'm going to just dab a bit of that away. I just want some of that dark green to show up as shadows in the undergrowth. And I've still got a bit left on my brush, and I'm going to put that on this side. And we'll make some tree shapes in the back. They will dry lighter and provide sort of a misty background to this flowered area. And we're going to bring this back this way. There are some rules that I know people use in laying out their designs and their paintings, and some of them deal with the rule of thirds, which I usually try to keep in mind. I don't like everything to be dead center. So if you divide your page into thirds this way, and sort of get where the lines intersect, keep your focal points there. That's one of the things to consider. Another one is the Fibonacci spiral, or the S-curve also works really well. So with this one, I think we're kind of going with the S, and we'll bring the water back over this way, a tiny bit this way as well. And now that I've got a little bit of this background happening, I just want to make some spikier trees and shrubbery in the background. You can see how beautifully that's diffusing, and that's going to become a shadowy, distant background. And you know, the more I think about having people who create, whether it's art or dance or cooking or poetry, we are all in this together. And sometimes those creative bits intersect. They're always important, I think, to pursue. I have made so many friends and connections over the years, and in particular this past year. It's just been a year since this YouTube channel has been going, just over a year. We're almost at 10,000 subscribers. It blows my mind that we have that many people who are just loving being creative and being together and being an accomplice. And one of the people who has been in touch with me and we've exchanged art and is Anne-Marie DeVolt from Maryland, and she has sent me this beautiful little pendant that her friend makes and sells in her little boutique there, and I'll put the link to that as well in my description. But it's just so heartwarming to be together and to see how we create and keep each other strong. And Canadian Mental Health, I think, is doing an amazing job. They have specific programs. My daughter's doing a walk, a fundraiser, and she's taking my two grandsons who are 3 and 7, and they're going down to Vancouver in British Columbia, and they're going to walk and raise money for Canadian Mental Health, the division that deals with women's health over reproductive issues. So important. There are so many ways that we can support each other, and boy, I'm so pleased that we have these options. So I'm going in now with a little bit more of the Mayan dark blue. I like to keep my colors fairly consistent throughout the painting, so I've got a bit of the Mayan here, and we'll lighten some of that and change it. But I just wanted to add a bit more of that, just to provide, again, another layer of depth. And then I'm going to stop with the darker colors for now, and I'm going to start bringing in the beautiful yellows and pinks and purples. We might even go in afterwards with some white gouache and brighten things up that way. So this cadmium yellow is absolutely beautiful, and I'm just going to have to spray that one more time. It looks a little more opaque possibly than some of the transparent colors, but I love that it's got that vibrant brightness to it. It's pushing away that blue a little bit. You can see where it's actually creating its own bit of shading and depth. And then we'll put a bit more on this side, some nice yellow in the background. Our greens in the spring sometimes have that beautiful yellowy brightness to them just as they're starting to grow. New shoots are coming. Often the greens are almost fluorescent in the garden, which is kind of fun. Now here I'm going to dab out again a little bit more. It still gives that hint of the yellow in the background, but it's going to give us room to add some shrubbery, some bits of color. With these brushes, I love that they can be scruffy on the end when they need to be, and that allows me to give these kind of organic shapes that are really fun to incorporate. And we're going to bring, I think, this water. Make sure I clean that. Actually, I'm going to switch to a different brush because I don't really want the yellow in my water. I'm just going to switch to a hockey brush. These again are a goat hair brush. Holds tons of water, tons of pigment, really lovely to work with. And I'm just going to get a bit more of this blue happening down in here, and I'm going to use my paper towel to smooth that off. Okay. Now they say with watercolor you start light and work dark, and that's very often the case. I just love how the colors mix and mingle, so I kind of keep that rule in the back of my head, but it's not always the way I go. Now I've got some quinacridone purple here, and I've got some quinacridone rose. I think I'm going to try the rose to start with, and I know when I mix that with the yellow that I've got in the background areas, it's going to turn it kind of a bit orange. But I'm thinking it's going to be an orange that's more of a spring and a vibrant orange rather than the burnt orange that we often see in our fall landscapes. So I'm just going to bring some of this in. Got some shrubbery happening here. And I'm just working with shapes. Okay. Keeping them a little bit irregular, but adding them in that way. And I'm going to let that sit for a moment. A lot of what you'll learn over the years of painting with watercolor is your relationship with the water and the pigment and understanding where that is. And sometimes it just becomes intuitive. You get a sense of what that needs to look like before you move on to the next part of it. Here you can see where, hopefully you can see where this is starting to be a little lighter at the one section here, a little bit darker in others. The paper, even though I've taped it down, is wanting to buckle. It does that. That's just, one of the things we need to be aware of. And I think while I'm pulling some of this out, it's going to give me some opportunity to add a few more colors, maybe some of that quinacridone purple. I'm trying to think of what I've seen growing in the spring here, and I've got some hellacores in my garden right now that are blooming, and they're so purple they're almost black. And that's the lovely thing about nature, right? We can add pretty much anything, and it can work. So I'm just going to put a bit more of the purple on this side. And again, dabbing away a tiny bit of it at a time. And allowing some of that to just mingle and mix. We'll have some floral areas coming down. And I think down here, I just love making rocks. So I'm going to add some rocky areas. So I'm wetting the area. If you can see how gorgeous it is already, the way the paints are flowing down into that wetness, the gold from the yellow and the purple. Typically yellow and purple together make brown, but what's happening here is there's a little bit of that blue and a little bit of that quinacridone rose as well, and they're just kind of coming together to make this luscious, almost like a rainbow effect. It's quite lovely. Just wanting to add, when I make my rocks, I like to start with a base of a darker color. So I'm going to put a little bit of the blue in at a random few spots. And then I also like to add a bit of green to my rocks, and I have, what have I got? I'm going to try a sap green, just because I can. Quite often I use a undersea green, but let's do the sap and see what happens. And then to brighten things on those rocks, I very often will add a quinacridone gold. Part of the reason for that is that when it's added, it tends to move things along on its own. It pushes things out of the way. And I'm going to add a bit more of the quinacridone gold up here just because, as I say, it pushes things away and gives you quite a lovely effect. It's I think it's just such a bonus that these paints do a lot of the work for you. I'm just having a hard time seeing at that angle because the paint, or rather the paper, has kind of buckled a little bit, but that's all right. So while this paint here in these areas where I said I wanted to put some rocks is still fairly damp, I want it to be soaked in enough that it's not pooling, it's not quite as glistening looking as it was. And we're just going to pull a bit of that away. I'm going to take my small, I've got lots of them here. Let's try this one. It's just a plastic tab off of a plastic bag, a bread bag, a produce bag, whatever. And if you gently push it through that wet, thick pigment, you get these gorgeous shapes. And where you've pushed the paint and the pigment away and it pools, you get a shadow shape for your rocks. So you're carving them out as you go. Here I'm going to put a little bit of rock hanging about here. And a little point coming out there, perhaps. And we'll make a few of them maybe here. It'll be kind of like a rock garden with these beautiful little florals. I'm going to go in a little while and carve out that shoreline. But for now, I'm going to leave it. I want to go in while this paint is still a bit on the damp side. You can see this paper towel is just sopped and saturated. And I just want to very lightly pull out a tiny bit of that color. Sometimes it's not what we put down, it's what we take away that helps to make the painting. And without all that glistening wetness, I can see where I can perhaps make another few little rocks here coming in. I'll leave those as bushes. And these can be some rocks there coming out into that little bit of water area. I want to take just a tiny bit more away from some of these areas just to lighten a few spots. And now I can go in and I can start defining and creating some more definite shapes. I'm going to throw that wet paper towel away. I think it's run its course. And some rocks happening there. And I want to go back in, I think, with the yellow at this point. Something to brighten things up a tiny bit. And we're just going to dot in just some shapes of some shrubs. I think what I want to do on the back here is bring a little more depth in along where this little inlet comes in. just so that that looks like it's those trees end there, and then this other part maybe will come up more like that. So let's go back in and try that sap green. I think the sap green will give us a more spring-like. Yes, just a little more. And we'll add a bit more of that sap green underneath. And just a little bit perhaps on this side. This is quite yellow, quite a big splotch of yellow. Splotch, that's a technical term. And I want to put in, I'm just going to try a bit of the red. Put a kind of a spiky bush there. Let's see how we manage with that. And we'll rinse our brush. Soften that a tiny bit. And because we can, let's go in with a tiny bit of that quinacridone purple while it's still wet, and those colors should work to diffuse together a tiny bit. And we'll give that back shoreline just a tiny bit more definition with that. Shadows and shapes. That's what we're all about here. I love that these purples and the golds and the greens are sort of all coming together and working to bring these, they're kind of like rainbow colors. I don't know. Sometimes you get the effect that almost like, you know, when you've got gasoline sitting on water and it has that kind of beautiful effect. We'll put a few more sort of taller trees in the background there, and maybe we'll put another one here just for a little bit of interest. I'm going to use my Levinson Goat Synthetic Blend with a nice, beautiful point on it. And now that it's sort of dry in this area, I think I'm going to create a couple of tree shapes, and I'm going to use, probably more of that Mayan dark blue. And I might even mix it, I don't know if you can see that or not, but I might even mix a tiny bit of the undersea green with it just to give it an interesting color. So I have a fair bit of water on my brush. I dipped it, I did not dry it, and then I touched the tip of it into the pigments, the Daniel Smith Mayan dark blue and undersea green. So my brush is fairly loaded. And because this brush has such a beautiful fine tip, I can use it like a pen. And I'm just going to create some tree shapes, some branches. And I'm just going to get the basis of it there. I can come back in at any time and create more branches. That one's got a bit thick on me. trunk a bit thicker and then dab it away just so that it gives that bit of shading. There we go. And I think we'll make another, just for a bit of balance, we'll make another sort of a stumpy looking tree happening there. And I think what I would like to do is just enhance some of these under the bushes shadows. So just a bit of color on and a slight dab just to take some of the excess off. I'm not going to draw any branches and shrubs coming into the water yet. I want to make sure that I define that shoreline the way I need to. And I think in order to keep this more spring-like, I do need to add a bit more yellow. So I'm going to use my Levinson goat hair, 1.5 inch goat hair synthetic blend, just to pick up some lovely pigment on the end of that. And drop in some dots of color. These will disperse and subdue a tiny bit. Just bringing things. I was afraid that that would happen, and I've got, because the quinacridone rose and the yellows kind of did blend together to make things perhaps a bit more orange than I would have liked to have seen there. So I'm just going to make sure I bring enough of the yellow back in. Just brightening up in a few spots. There we go. And we'll lighten things up. That looks like a kind of a yellowy shrub in the middle, in the bottom here. Let's enhance that a bit more, maybe, and make that a bit more. Bit more noticeable. Okay. Make sure we got that up there. I think now I want to start defining that shoreline a tiny bit. But I want to lighten these purples just a tiny bit. And I have a tiny bit of lavender. It's very opaque. It's a Daniel Smith lavender color. I just think that it would be fun to put that in just in a couple wee spots. Perhaps to brighten things up. And again, just would have been fun to put some of that lavender on those rocks, perhaps. That would have been nice. Okay. When this is dry, I will go in with my Levinson goat hair synthetic blend brush and create some more tree shapes, I think, just to add a bit of interest. But for now, I'm going to leave that and quickly work on my shoreline. And I'm going to turn my page this way, and I'm going to find a little shaper brush. These brushes typically are made for acrylic. They're short bristles, they're very stiff, they don't hold a lot of water, and that's not important. I don't care about that. I just want them to be a bit dampish, and I use them as I would a pen or a pencil to sort of shape things out. One thing I do want to make sure that I get is I want to make sure that my horizon is straight. So I'm going to cheat. I'm going to, that's at 8, and that's at 8. I think I'm good. Sometimes it takes a bit of trial and error to get those horizon lines nice and straight. So always with my paper towel in my left hand, my little scrubber brush in the right hand, just damp. My page is still fairly damp. You can do this once your page is completely dry as well. You just need a bit more water on your brush. So what I like to do is sort of carve out a bit of a line where I want my shoreline to be with the water. And I don't mind that there's a bit of this color. It sort of adds some interest. It can be shadows. It can be all kinds of things. On this side, I'm going to a bit of water. It just helps to define your rocky edges. And you can reshape things. I didn't like that curve down so much, so I'm going to make it so that it goes further out into the water area. Some of this color in the middle here probably wasn't, it wasn't really necessary, so I'm going to just lightly work at that. Now, it's called a scrubber often. You have to be careful with your paper, especially if you're not using 100% cotton. But even then, you don't want to be working away at the surface of your paper so much as just the surface of where the pigment is sitting. And it doesn't take a very heavy hand to get in there and just lift that out a little bit. And you can see how easy it is to shape and to shadow these edges. Now this is going to be an interesting one because I think I'm going to push that up and make it like shrubbery there. And then we'll bring that edge out. And we'll bring this edge back. We probably don't even have to make a horizon line so much as just to shape a bit of the edge here. That bit of color there sort of gives a sense of something on the very distant horizon. So, and we'll just shape this a tiny bit, give it a bit of interest. I love that these pigments just work so well together. You can pull them out, you can let them sit. You can see here where the reds and the golds have kind of found their place on the page. They're sitting there, they're still drying, but they've sort of found their own spot, and they're going to stay that, that gorgeous and that rich right there. And I think here I just need to, I'm going to pull just a tiny bit of this out of here, make it like a little inlet. Just a little place where the waters come in to pool and sit for a bit. And then we'll spread that out. One thing I have a habit of doing is not keeping my lines straight when I'm doing this. And that's something that you want to be aware of if you're pulling lines out. Your horizon lines typically, even though it may look, to the naked eye that it's off, you definitely don't not want to be doing this. And that's kind of a natural movement for our bodies to make, right? That kind of arcing movement. So it's important to sort of keep it as straight across as you can. And I just think that should be maybe lightened a tiny bit. You need to be careful also not to leave water pooling in any of these areas, or you'll get a blossom or a bloom. So I'm kind of happy with the way that water is sitting. It's got a bit of, you can see where the lightness has come through from that yellow that we put in the background. It's coming through, it's giving a little bit of lightness to this part of the water. And then down here we've got some shadows because the shrubbery and the rocks and things are coming in a little more closely. So I do think that we need to drag a bit of this up and brighten things up a little bit. And I'm wondering if maybe if I just add some water here, and I'm just using the scrubber brush because it's in my hand. I'm just going to go in, oh, and there's a little fuzzball. I just want to go in and brighten up a tiny bit of that. Add a few more. There. Okay. So to lighten this even more, to make it more spring-like, I will go in probably and maybe spatter with a bit of gouache, a bit of Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleed Proof White, just to give a few highlights. I'll add a few more trees on that side. But I think the foundation of it is pretty much there. And I will let it sit for a few moments. It needs to dry a bit more before I try to do any more. With this, I may put in a few spikes of different colors of flowers happening. But I think for now, this is where I'm going to leave it. I will post pictures, photos as well of the completed project. I hope that that this brings a nice donation to the Canadian Mental Health Association through Shoppers Foundation. It's been my pleasure, and I hope you've enjoyed watching how this has all come together. I'd like to thank the Process Art Discovery audience for joining me today as I prepared this little piece of watercolor to support Canadian mental health through the Shoppers Foundation. The link will be in the description if you would love to contribute in your way. Proceeds go directly to Canadian Mental Health. The link in the description will be to our local store, but you can always find one in your area. In the meantime, head on over to Process Art Discovery, subscribe to the channel, and visit their members area.